Epistemology is that branch of philosophy looking at the nature of knowledge, where it comes from, its limits,
Yeah.
the theory of knowledge.
Theory of knowledge. Okay.
But the crucial bit, I think, is that it's not just describing beliefs. That's more psychology, right?
Huh?
Epistemology gives us the tools to evaluate beliefs, to sort of figure out which ones actually count as knowledge. It's about telling solid claims from just, well, opinion.
Which feels incredibly necessary right now.
Doesn't it just?
Yeah.
In this, information overload world.
Exactly. So our mission for you, listening in, is to go through the sources you've given us, find those really interesting nuggets, those aha moments.
Yeah, try and make the abstract stuff click.
Let's make it click. Okay, first things first. Let's start right at the beginning. When you say you know something, what does that actually mean, philosophically speaking?
Well, fundamentally, knowledge is seen as a kind of cognitive success. It's an awareness, maybe a familiarity and understanding.
A skill, even?
Or a skill, yes. Something that connects your mind to reality. Most epistemologists think of it as an individual's mental state, basically. It helps you make sense of the world.
Right.
Though, people also talk about group knowledge or even information in a computer sometimes. But mostly it's about the individual mind.
Okay. And what's really grabbed me looking at this is that it's not just one monolithic thing, knowledge. Philosophers slice it up, don't they? Different kinds.
They do.
The big one seems to be propositional knowledge. Knowledge that, like, Ravi knows that kangaroos hop. What's the deal with that type?
That's the one philosophers focus on most, yeah. Propositional knowledge is theoretical. It's expressed in a statement, often using that clause, just like your example.
Okay.
And the key thing is it's sort of use-independent. It's not about doing something practical. It's a mental representation about how things are.
So it's abstract ideas, concepts.
Exactly. And because it's abstract, it's often thought only creatures with pretty complex minds, like us humans, can really have it.
Right, right. Okay, so that's theoretical knowledge. But what about, well, I feel like I know how to ride a bike. That feels totally different from knowing a fact about kangaroos.
Perfect example. That leads straight into non-propositional knowledge. Riding a bike is classic knowledge how. It's a practical skill and ability.
Like making lasagna.
Exactly. Knowing how to make lasagna. It's tied to a goal. And you can't just learn it from a book, really. You need practice.
Makes sense.
And then there's also knowledge by acquaintance. That's about direct familiarity.
Oh, like knowing a person or a place.
Precisely. Knowing Perth because you've been there, or knowing Marta Vieira da Silva because you've met her. You have this direct experience. Bertrand Russell really hammered home this distinction.
Okay, so we've got the theoretical stuff, the practical skills, and direct familiarity. That already paints a clearer picture. Now, digging a bit deeper, how we get this knowledge. There's this other huge distinction, a posteriori versus a priori.
Ah, yes.
Crucial.
This is central to that whole empiricism versus rationalism thing, isn't it? Can you break those down?
Definitely. A posteriori knowledge is the empirical stuff. It comes after experience through your senses.
Like seeing the sunshine.
Seeing the sunshine, smelling bad meat, hearing a noise. It's the knowledge we get from observation, from science, from everyday life.
Got it.
A priori knowledge, on the other hand, is non-empirical. It doesn't depend on sense experience. Think 2 + 2 = 4.
You just know it. Through reason.
Through reason, yeah. It's the kind of knowledge you find in maths and logic. You don't need to go out and count pairs of things to confirm it's true. And related to that, I've seen these terms analytic and synthetic truths pop up. How do they fit?
They're closely related, yeah, though how closely is debated. An analytic truth is true just based on the meaning of the words. All bachelors are unmarried.
Because that's what bachelor means.
Exactly. The definition contains the truth. A synthetic truth, though, needs more. It depends on facts about the world. Snow is white.
You have to check the snow.
Right. The meaning of snow and white doesn't automatically make it true. Now, often a priori is linked to analytic and a posteriori to synthetic, but it's not perfectly neat. Some philosophers, like Quine, famously argued the whole analytic-synthetic distinction isn't really that sharp anyway.
Okay, that's another layer. So with all these distinctions, types of knowledge, how we get it, we hit the really big question. What actually counts as knowledge? What are the conditions? For ages, the answer seems simple. Justified true belief, JTB.
The traditional analysis, yeah. It sounds neat, doesn't it? You need to believe it, it has to actually be true, and you need some good reason, some justification for believing it.
Seems straightforward enough.
It did, until the 1960s, when Edmund Gettier came along and basically blew it up.
Ah, the Gettier problem.
Yeah.
This is where it gets really counterintuitive. Right?
Totally. He came up with these clever counterexamples showing you could have a justified true belief that somehow still didn't feel like real knowledge.
Can you give us one of those examples? The fake Barnes one is pretty famous, isn't it?
That's a classic, yeah. So imagine you're driving through fake barn county, where, unbeknownst to you, almost everything that looks like a barn is just a facade.
Okay, lots of fakes.
But just by sheer luck, you happen to stop and look at the one real barn in the whole area, and you think, hey, that's a barn.
Right. Seems reasonable. You're looking right at it.
Exactly. So your belief, that's a barn, is true. It is the real one, and it seems justified. Your eyes are working, it looks just like a barn.
Yeah.
JTB fulfilled. But intuitively, we feel like you don't really know it's a barn. You could have so easily looked at one of the fakes and formed the same belief, which would have been false. Your true belief is true purely by coincidence, by luck.
Ah, that epistemic luck. So your justification wasn't properly connected to the truth, in a way.
Precisely.
Uh-huh.
It was just luck that your justified belief happened to land on the truth in this specific instance.
So what does this all mean then? If JTB isn't enough because of this luck factor, what are we left with?
Well, it means that nice, tidy definition wasn't so tidy after all. Gettier problems sparked decades of debate, trying to find a fourth condition or a different analysis altogether.
Like what? What are some alternatives?
Oh, loads. Maybe knowledge is a belief that's caused by the fact itself in the right way. Or maybe it's a belief produced by a reliable process.
A process that usually gets things right.
Exactly. But the honest answer is, there's no universal agreement now. No single definition has replaced JTB that satisfies everyone. Some philosophers, like Timothy Williamson, even argue maybe knowledge is fundamental. Maybe you can't break it down into belief plus truth plus justification plus whatever. Maybe knowing is just knowing.
Wow. Okay, so defining knowledge is much harder than it looks. If JTB isn't the whole story, that really puts the spotlight back on justification itself, doesn't it?
Right.
How do we justify our beliefs if not just leading to a lucky true belief? What are the sources?
Right. So where does justification come from? Epistemologists usually talk about a few main sources. First, there's perception. Seeing, hearing, touching. But it's not just passive sensing. It's an active process, interpreting signals.
Okay, perception. What else?
It's introspection, looking inward, knowing you feel tired or happy or thinking about lunch, accessing your own mental states.
Right, inside your own head.
Then reason. This is key for that a priori stuff, like maths, but also for drawing inferences. You see wet streets, you infer it probably rained. That's reasoning.
Logical connection.
Yep. And memory, of course. Retaining and recalling information. Remembering your friend's birthday or what you learned last week.
Can't know much without memory.
True. And finally, a huge one, testimony. Getting information from others.
Like listening to this right now.
Exactly. Or reading a book or a news report or just having a conversation. So much of what we think we know comes through testimony.
Perception, introspection, reason, memory, testimony. Okay, so those are the ways we get individual justified beliefs. But how do they all fit together? How is our knowledge structured? This brings us to that foundationalism versus coherentism debate, right?
That's the one. And it really stems from trying to solve the regress problem.
The regress problem. Sounds ominous.
It's a classic philosophical puzzle, sometimes called Agrippa's trilemma. Basically, if every belief needs justification from another belief, where does it end? You either get an infinite chain of justifications, which seems impossible for humans.
Right, you never get to the bottom.
Or the chain loops back on itself. Circular reasoning, which doesn't seem to justify anything new.
Begging a question.
Or the chain just stops somewhere with the belief that isn't itself justified by another belief. But then, how is that belief justified?
A tricky trilemma indeed. So how do foundationalism and coherentism try to solve this?
Well, foundationalism takes that third option but gives it a positive spin. It says knowledge is like a building.
Okay.
It rests on a foundation of basic beliefs. These beliefs are justified, but not by other beliefs. They're justified directly, perhaps by perception or introspection. They're the bedrock.
Self-evident, almost.
Something like that, yeah. They provide the ultimate support for everything else built on top.
Okay, that's the building model. What about coherentism?
Coherentism rejects the building idea. It says knowledge is more like a web or maybe a raft.
A web interconnected.
Exactly. For a coherentist, a belief is justified if it fits well, if it coheres with all your other beliefs. It's about mutual support, consistency, explanatory power within the whole system.
So no single foundational belief, just the strength of the connection.
Precisely. It's a more holistic picture. And, of course, there are attempts to blend these, like sound herentism, trying to get the best of both worlds. And some even bite the bullet on infinite chains. That's infinitism, though it's less common.
Fascinating contrast, the building versus the web. Okay, another big debate seems to be about where the justification factors are located. Internalism versus externalism.
Yes, this is about what makes a belief justified. Is it something inside your head or outside?
So, internalism says.
Internalism says justification depends only on factors that are internal to your mind, things you can access just by reflecting, by introspection.
Like the evidence you're aware of.
Exactly. A prominent version is evidentialism. Your belief is justified if, and only if, it fits the evidence you possess mentally. It has to be something accessible to you.
That feels quite intuitive, right? My justification should be something I can grasp.
It does feel intuitive. But externalism pushes back. Externalists argue that at least some justifying factors are external to your mind.
Outside your head? Like what?
Well, think about believing there's a cup on the table because you see it. An externalist might say what matters isn't just your internal feeling of seeing a cup, but objective external facts. Such as whether your eyesight is actually working properly, whether the lighting is good, whether you're not hallucinating. Factors about the reliability of the process connecting your belief to the world.
Ah, so it's not just that you have the belief, but how you got it, and whether that method is trustworthy.
Exactly. It's about the link to reality. Key externalist theories focus on this. Reliabilism, for instance, says a belief is justified if it's produced by a cognitive process like perception or memory or reasoning that is, in fact, reliable. That generally produces true beliefs in the relevant environment.
Okay, so the process matters more than my internal feeling about it.
In a nutshell, yes. And another influential externalist approach is virtue epistemology. This focuses on the person, the knower.
Intellectual virtues.
Right. A belief is justified, or maybe even counts as knowledge, if it arises from the stable traits of a virtuous knower, things like open-mindedness, conscientiousness, intellectual courage, thoroughness. It's about having good epistemic character.
So internalism focuses on what's in my head, externalism focuses on the reliable process or the virtuous character that produced the belief. Lots of different angles.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's pull back a bit. We've got definitions, types, sources, structures, debates about justification. But what if, despite all this philosophical machinery, we just can't actually know anything for sure? Let's talk about skepticism.
Ah, the specter at the feast. Skepticism, in its philosophical sense, is basically doubting or questioning our ability to achieve knowledge.
Is it all or nothing, or are there degrees?
There are definitely degrees. You have limited skepticism, which doubts knowledge in just one area. Like maybe we can't know about morality or about God, or even about the external world beyond our senses.
External world skepticism.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty radical.
It is. And that leads towards global skepticism, the idea that we can't know anything at all in any area.
How do they argue for that? Seems extreme.
Well, the classic arguments often involve scenarios designed to show we can't rule out massive deception. Most famous is probably Descartes' dream argument.
How do I know I'm not dreaming right now?
Exactly. If you can't be absolutely certain you're not dreaming, how can you be certain about anything you perceive through your senses? And the modern version is the brain in a vat thought experiment.
My brain is just floating somewhere, being fed signals to make me think this is real.
Right. If you can't know for sure that you aren't a brain in a vat, how can you know anything about the supposed external world? These scenarios challenge our claims to certainty.
Does anyone actually believe we know nothing?
Very few philosophers explicitly endorse global skepticism, but it's incredibly important as a challenge. Any good theory of knowledge really needs to explain why skepticism is wrong or why it doesn't undermine our everyday knowledge claims.
Okay, so skepticism is the ultimate challenge. But is there a middle ground? Like maybe we can't have absolute certainty, but we can still have knowledge.
That's exactly where fallibilism comes in. It's probably the dominant view among epistemologists today.
Fallibilism, meaning we can be wrong.
Essentially, yes. Fallibilists agree with the skeptic that we can't achieve absolute infallible certainty for most, maybe even all, of our beliefs. But crucially, they argue that knowledge doesn't require that kind of certainty.
So knowledge can be fallible. It can be open to revision.
Precisely. You can know something even if there's a tiny theoretical possibility you might be mistaken. Think about scientific knowledge. We consider it knowledge, but science is constantly refining and revising its theories. Fallibilism encourages having an open mind, acknowledging we could be wrong but still allows us to claim knowledge.
That sounds much more practical for living life.
It generally aligns better with how we actually operate. And related to this questioning of universal standards, you also get epistemic relativism.
Relativism, meaning truth or knowledge is relative.
Yeah, the idea that there aren't universal standards for what counts as knowledge or justification. It depends on your culture or your framework, or maybe even individually. What's known for one group might not be for another. It's a controversial view, naturally.
Okay, so we've wrestled with the definition, the sources, the structure, the potential lack of certainty. Why bother? Given all these hurdles and complexities, why is knowledge valuable? Why pursue it?
That's a fundamental question. The value of knowledge, well, firstly, it clearly has instrumental value, practical value.
It helps us do things.
Exactly. A doctor's knowledge helps cure patients. An engineer's knowledge helps build bridges. Knowing where the grocery store is helps you get food. It helps us achieve our goals, navigate the world effectively. Assessing this instrumental value is key when we decide, say, what research to fund.
Makes sense. Practical utility.
But is that all? Plato famously argued knowledge is better than just having a true belief, even if both lead to the right action.
Why bet?
He suggested knowledge is more stable. It's tethered by justification. A true belief might be lost easily, or you might abandon it if challenged, but knowledge, being grounded, is more resilient.
Ah, interesting. More reliable over time.
And beyond that, many philosophers argue knowledge has intrinsic value. It's good in itself just to know and understand things, regardless of practical payoff.
Like the sheer joy of learning something new.
Perhaps, yeah, a fundamental aspect of human flourishing, maybe.
And knowledge isn't the only goal here, right? You mentioned other related concepts earlier.
True. Epistemology also looks at things like rationality, acting or believing based on good reasons, ensuring your beliefs are coherent. There's theoretical rationality, what to believe, and practical rationality, what to do.
And evidence.
Evidence is crucial, the information that supports or undermines a belief. It can be mental states, physical objects, and evidence can be defeated by new information, what we call defeaters.
Right. New evidence changes things.
Then there's understanding. This is often seen as deeper than just knowing individual facts. It's about grasping connections, seeing why things are the way they are. Many see understanding as particularly valuable, maybe even more so than just knowing facts.
A more holistic grasp.
Exactly. And perhaps at the top, you have wisdom, often seen as the highest epistemic good. It's not just knowledge or understanding, but also involves reflection, good judgment, and applying knowledge effectively to live well and navigate complex human situations.
Knowledge, rationality, evidence, understanding, wisdom. Quite a landscape.
It truly is. And it's important to remember this isn't just a Western philosophical tradition. For instance, classical Indian philosophy has incredibly rich epistemological discussions about pramada, the valid means of knowing. They identify sources like perception, inference, testimony, comparison, and others, debating their nature and reliability in great detail.
So different frameworks, but grappling with the same fundamental questions about knowing.
Exactly. It shows how universal these concerns are and how valuable it is to consider diverse perspectives on how we know what we know. Knowledge really is most valuable when we understand its complexities and apply it thoughtfully.
Wow, okay. What a tour. We've gone from asking, what does it mean to know, to different types of knowledge, like propositional versus know-how.
Through justification, the sources like perception and testimony, the structured debates like foundationalism versus coherentism.
Internalism versus externalism, the challenge of skepticism, the response of fallibilism, and finally thinking about the value of knowledge itself and related goals like understanding and wisdom.
It's a huge field.
It really is. So much richness, so much complexity.
And, while a lot of this sounds quite abstract, quite academic,
Yeah.
it really does have a massive impact on, well, everyday life. How we deal with the fire hose of information coming at us constantly, how we make decisions, big and small, how critically we evaluate the claims people make.
Thinking about why we believe what we believe.
Exactly. These concepts, even if we don't use the jargon, are working underneath the surface whenever we try to figure things out. They're tools for thinking more clearly.